Namaste, Galactic family. Welcome back to the channel, guys. Come on into this dimension. Come on into this deep cosmic grid deep dive, historical deep dive. And I'm really excited today because we have Gene Decode back on the show. And really excited that he's here. He came on my channel and we did a live stream about a couple months ago, right before I did my DC trip. And so we kind of in that show went into some hidden knowledge around DC and some of the stuff that you know on the grids in DC, and gave us a lot of really amazing insight about that. So I'm so excited that you're here. Thank you for coming back on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Wonderful. How is the missus? Last
Oh,
time we started to talk about that a little bit.
working hard. We're working hard, getting things done. So it's for us the busy time of year. We go up in the mountains a lot, and then hiking, and trying to get our health back, and back in shape and all that stuff. Plus work on the house because it's not freezing cold outside. I work on the house on the inside in the winter, but even that, I'm took a load of boxes out to my storage, try to get so I can get the basement rearranged so I can finish the storage room we had created in the basement. And then once that's done, I'm gonna finish the whole basement. So I'm working on that.
Okay. Yeah, good time to get those house projects done, huh?
Yeah, this is a huge one because it requires first to put an insulation on the concrete wall, and then have a framer because it's by code, and I don't have the licensing. I can do it, but we want to be by code. So I have a person come out and do the framing, and then the electrical, and then I'd finish the rest, which is the insulation in between the studs, and then the finish of the wire up to the boxes of the electrical, putting the plugs and that stuff on, and the boxes, and then the drywall, and then the taping and the mudding and the texturing and the painting and the flooring and the ceiling part and all of that. I do all of that. So on my website deep dives, I'm going to actually on genedecode.org. I'm going to actually video my hands, not my face, but my hands working, and showing how to put down, do simple tricks I've learned because I used to do it for many years after I got out of the Navy. In the last few years in the Navy, is I learned construction by going to work for Habitat for Humanity for free.
Okay.
You give your time, but you're taught by the professionals how to do it professionally, and they know how all the little tricks and things because they've been doing it for decades. So I learned all that. And then a lot of advances have happened with tiling, like Schluter flooring, especially for basements where the floor moves slightly. You need a disconnect where the floor can move and the tiles don't. Otherwise, you get cracking and upheaval. And then there's also a leveling system that didn't exist when I did flooring back in the 90s when I retired, where you can make your tires so they don't have tiles, so they're tiles so they don't have lippage, and you can level them. So I'm doing all of that stuff. I've done the storage room. I'm finishing the tiling, and then that'll be done. I'll move everything from the basement into the storage room. And in the process of doing the storage room, it's a good thing I didn't video myself doing that, because the first strip of Schluter, I had to pull it back up. It was a disaster. I'm like, oh my gosh, I got mastic on the wall and me and it's everywhere. So I had to clean it all back up and water it down and start over. Because when they say it needs to be wet, that's an understatement compared to how the consistency of the mastic is when you're doing tiling compared to Schluter. It's massively more wet than you would think. It's literally like wetter than pudding. I mean, it's it's kind of like the consistency of a cream soup. Like, it's really wet, but yeah, that's what you need. And then there's no one that shows you really how to tape, which I wanted to make it semi-waterproof up to the baseboard level, how to tape the wall to the floor. So I figured it out myself. So I'm going to film all of that. So tips on household tips. I have a section on. I don't have anything in it on the Deep Dives website, but I'll be filming and putting that on quite shortly.
Well, it's kind of like you share as you learn, right? Like everything you're learning, you're just sharing it at the same time. It's like how
Yeah.
you keep information flowing through.
Yeah, it's that's what's so great with the website. We have I have the Blessed for Service team that helps me, and we all learn from each other, and they all have 30 plus people that have all this experience all over the world of different ways to do different things. And I mean, it's fantastic. You learn a lot. And that's why we're all here, is we need to learn from each other. The
Yeah.
need to learn the real history of the world. We need to really learn where we came from, what the history of humanity is, how they used to build. If you look at the 1893 Chicago World's Fair, and you see the magnificent architecture that's gone now. They burned it down with the Chicago fire. That was not an accident. That was on purpose to get rid of those buildings. All of the big cities actually used to be like that. I remember in the city I was born in, a big city in the capital of the state, that you could see this magnificent architecture. Hardly any of that's left anywhere. You have a building here or there, and it's quite obvious when you're looking at it. You're looking at free energy systems. So you sometimes see like some of the Capitol buildings actually of different states. I think Colorado's Capitol used to have this. I don't think it has it anymore. They took the crystal out. You were talking about diamonds. There was a diamond crystal at the Denver, Colorado Capitol building has a gold-plated dome. And then on top of that is a little tiny pinnacle with a little gold plate, and then a little kind of prismatic, like lensing system, and a little diamond used to sit in there. Not little, I mean, little in the size of something compared to saying a baseball's little, but it was a pretty decent crystal sat in there, and that's a free energy system where crystals have the ability to generate massive power. And so those free energy systems are very powerful and very important to the world. The ancient Egyptians used to use it, of course, with the pyramid systems that are all over the world. Used to be, during the time of Atlantis and Lemuria, a giant worldwide, not just free energy, but communication, where they had what they call mercy seat. You would go sit in that seat and you could telepath with anybody and any one of the other ones on Earth.
Okay. That's amazing. Yeah, it's troubling to me when I hear diamond power being used in the Capitol building. I'm thinking, oh no, the dark forces have gotten a hold of these crystal technologies and they're using them to power energy into and even hijack God infrastructure. As you know, I was just in Washington, D.C., and so I was in the Capitol building, managed to get in there and get a tour of the Senate floor and take, a look into all of the rooms that was insurrected, the rooms that they do the inaugurations. I got to look under the actual Capitol dome in DC, and wow, so many levels of hijacking, so many levels of God. Uh, it was almost as if they were trying to deify according to agendas of the draconian reptilian races, also the Aquilan and the Altair races, seal off those matrix systems according to the control structures of agriculture, science, you know, everything in terms of which powers and generates humankind. And it was just really interesting to me to see the archetypes in which they used to hijack those control structures. The main one was like Minerva. They were using the energy of Minerva, which seemed to be like a hijacking from the goddess Neith, which was an original Berber tribal goddess woman. It's just where they took the image of Lady Liberty and kind of transformed the image of Lady Liberty into a representation of Athena or Minerva. And then they were utilizing that as statues there in the Capitol building, which seems like to kind of hijack the power or the strategic warfare essence of the goddess, so to speak, and use that towards the control system. So yeah, I'm looking at this in terms of like, how are they energetically, spiritually, through deification, through lesser spirits, through archetypes, through all these different levels and layers of spirit body, how are they really taking control of the systems and then funneling that into greater harvesting of humanity's energy?
So, when you look at, Minerva first, of course, was the Roman goddess of wisdom, also of war and crafts. So they like to, essentially are looking at wisdom of warfare, but, it was a much, much older goddess, so to speak, or symbol of knowledge and wisdom that went all the way back to Lemuria. Minerva was originally. So they, of course, as they went through to the Roman Empire, became a conquering empire, and it got into just the knowledge of war. And so the wisdom in war and the craft of war and the warcraft and all that, like Sun Tzu's art of war, is pretty much what's used today for at least the people that are on the winning side, like in Ukraine. The Russians are using it quite well. The Ukrainians, not so good. They don't seem to have a clue when it comes to the art of war. You take the bait every time. It falls back in their middle and has you on both sides on the high ground, and they fall back in the valley, and you go right on in there. Yeah, and then they pummel you from the ridges on the side. I'm like, did you not understand this? I mean, I understand this even in a ring in martial arts. If a guy if you're fighting more than one opponent and an opponent in the middle falls back, they're getting you to go inside where you're going to be surrounded. Unless you're a very good fighter, that's not really a good idea. If you're a very good fighter, it's a great idea, because then you can use everybody against everybody. I actually prefer it, because if I'm fighting against a crowd of people, with one person, I have to kind of pay attention to everything they're doing, of course, but with a crowd of people, I don't have to so much pay attention to one person. I just wait for the first blow. I got people all around me moving in and out, and so I can take one person into the next person and have the friends of the people hitting each other. So dodge, throw this person to that person, let that person kick or hit that person. If you're able to do that. Not a lot of people are. It's kind of a samurai technique, but again, that goes to the art of war. And this goes into the understanding of technology in general. We go back to the diamonds and the piezoelectric effect and the power that gives. Additionally, there's other crystalline effects that have been lost, like the power crystals of Atlantis.
Right.
That was off-world technology, actually, that was given to them by off-world species, several different ones, some of which you already mentioned. And those crystals were able to conduct power and communications throughout the entire world. We see it in drawings and, not drawings so much as renderings on temples and things in Egypt, where we see these giant crystalline structures. And then you look at what Ashiana Dean calls the apens. There's these giant crystalline structures underneath the earth that are caves that are, like in Mexico, there's a giant crystal cave that they found that is gypsum crystals that are massive. I mean, these crystals are easily 100, 200 feet long, many of them. Let's see. It's they said 980 feet beneath Sierra de Niaca Mountain in Chihuahua, Mexico. It's extremely hot in there, but it's part of these crystalline structures are part of what are known as apen structures. And they help steady the Earth's frequencies. And there's certain ones. So like the US has a outlying structure of these crystalline cavern systems under the earth that if you connect them, they make an eagle.
Okay.
Yep. And then in China, they make a dragon. In Russia, they make a bear. And so these symbols that the main countries in those areas have taken as an energy that they've sensed or known of, depending on the information they had, that goes back into times of histories that are kept by the Masonic groups that most of humanity has no access to, of knowing these ancient energy systems. We talked previously how they build on certain ley lines and all of that. And after we finish this, I'm going to record the first part of my dumb series decodes. I'm starting those again. I'm doing part 1. It'll should be live streamed sometime this week, and it'll go just into technology first. But the second part will be introduction to the different systems all over the world. I mean, all over the US. First is just the US. And then the third one, I'll actually go into the DUMBs. And if you start looking at the structure, the main DUMBs in the US, you have a lot of these symbols they use. You have in California a pentagram system of DUMBs where they're laid out on a pentagram, on the points of the star of a pentagram. You have another set that is laid out on Gemini, the twins, and then you have another one that's laid on the constellation of Orion, including the bow and everything. It's got the entire constellation for the domes. I also know that there's similar situations in Europe and Asia where they're laid out on star systems, on the ancient constellations that the ancients found. And so they know that those energies are massive electromagnetic and gravitational forces that affect the earth. I mean, it's all over in the Bible too, of bringing forth the Mazzaroth and calculating the ascension of Aries, or all of these different things. It's all over the Bible because the ancients understood how important it is, and how they go into the zodiac. And I'm hoping to do this as a decode later, or somebody in the Blessed for Service team, of a decode on the true zodiac, because again, they don't want you to know the truth. So what you have is not the truth. So the zodiac that most people use is 12 signs, where it's actually 13, which they make you believe is an unholy number, but it's actually, if you look at pretty much every religious system, it's based on 13, like Jesus Christ and 12 apostles. And if we take you take a ping pong ball, for example, 13 of them. You take one in the center and start gluing all the other balls around that ball. You'll find that you can glue precisely no more than 12, but precisely covering the one in the center. So it's why the Bible says that Christ is in the middle. He supports the 12, because you have 12 around the one, which is 13. And so you have these systems like this. So the true zodiac is 13, but the signs are not all equal in length, because the constellations are not equal in length. And then you have one that's missing, which is Ophiuchus, the healer. Of course, they don't want people to know the time frame of the healer, because if you're born in that time, that's kind of like the foundation of your house. When you set the foundation, it determines to some degree what you're going to use the structure for. You're not going to put down a cement pad for a 2-story ranch type house and try to build the Empire State Building or the trade towers on it. And the same thing, if you had a pad for the trade towers, it'd be kind of ludicrous seeing a little tiny 2-story ranch size house on it. I mean, the pad has a lot to do with what the usage of and how the system will be built out, and as you go forward in life. Of course, your choices delineate significantly, but if you're looking at the foundations, that's where you start. And so when you're born, as you're coming down through the birth canal and all that water and all, water, blood, it's mostly water, actually. We call it blood, but its majority is actually water. And so as you're coming down that's a flow of energy, and it's connecting to the flow of energy at the time you're being born, which is predominantly controlled by the time of day, the location on Earth, and the zodiac sign that's over the sun when the sun rose that day. And, if you look at the different zodiac symbols, I think Scorpio's 9.7 days long, Libra something like 40 something days.
What is your zodiac sign, Gene?
I'll let that people guess on that one. I'll leave
Ah,
it open. What do you think I am?
good question. Hard to say. Hard to say. Um, Initially I was getting a little bit of a fire sign. I was
Yeah,
getting
and that's interesting too. Now that you mentioned fire signs, so Chinese they go into a five element system, and of course that's truncated too because all systems are based on sacred geometry 1, 3, 7, 12, 13, etc. 144. And so if we look at the five elements, it's actually seven elements, but they have the fire element, and then you have wood. And my body type is more of a combination of wood and fire. If you look from the Chinese element system, I'm tall, but I'm kind of in my youth, I was fiery and hot, kind of red faced type person all the time, still have that. You're like a wood person where you're tall and winnowy and like a willow tree. And so
mm-hmm,
that's called out a wood, your basic element in Chinese
mm-hmm.
medicine is wood. Of course, they're missing two. You just go to the Greek system, you know the two elements are missing. You combine them, you get the seven elements to match the seven Platonic solids, which of course they don't tell you it's seven, they tell you it's five,
Right.
because they don't give you the feminine.
Right. I kind of want to go back to what you were just saying. So everything that you were talking about prior to coming into the astrology part with the grids, you were kind of touching on Lemurian pylon implant network systems, Atlantean pylon network implant systems with the Aquilian running structures between certain countries, also the Draco connected to China. Um, I have found it to be, according to those channeled networks through Ashana's work, but also I found that the symbols of countries, so like what they carry in terms of like their national animal, what they carry in terms of their crest as well, also plays a part of all of the energy entanglement when it comes to implementing the way those energies run or hold artificial grids or artificial holograms of control structures that pertain to the militarization or pertain to the political system, pertain to the way that the universe essentially runs currents of energy that controls humanity. Because I feel like the ones we're talking about when it comes to war, these are more through conquer and divide tactics, these are more through invader technologies, they're more through them essentially suppressing humanity through whatever agenda on a celestial level that it ultimately is, or on a galactic level, or on a level of galactic warfare. Um, with the diamond architecture, kind of going back to that, uh, for me, I've been seeing that every single year around this time, like as we come into the Syrian Gateway or the Lions Gateway, that we then re-implement the diamond infrastructure, that there's this entire diamond network, grid network that runs all over the earth. And the more I've gotten into it, I've seen like giant that this all connects to the 12 central suns. And I don't know if you're familiar with the 12 central suns. I feel like I need that more explained to me, is because it's hard for me to fully fathom it. Is it 12 different suns that are actually rotating into our, solar system, into our universal field of awareness, that they are actually changing? Because I know at certain times, as we're going through the Syrian alignment, we see a blue sun. The sun color actually changes. So is the Syrian sun one of the 12 central suns? And according to that 12 central suns, there's 12 central diamond discs inside of the earth that activate with that bring upon the architecture of the hologram of the diamond energy that runs inside the earth, and then therefore can run into people's bioenergetic field and then activate the diamond consciousness, which is ultimately the basis for the 144,000 harmonics, and also the guardian resurrection of 300,000 plus that are building the golden age into the new earth body. So it's like, as we as people on the earth that get these ascension capacities into the 12D blueprint, we then attain the abilities to do things on different levels or parallel dimensions of earth. I feel I personally am working out of 7-dimensional parallel earth all the time. that I'm actually more rooted or founded in that dimensional Earth than I am on Earth, even though I'm living on the same Earth and this participating in the same holograms. I'm still not rooted in terms of my grid infrastructure up underneath my feet. So I'm living an entirely different reality. Why this matters in terms of the diamond architecture is because there's been a lot of prophecy that there's actually a lot of hidden ancient technology that's supposed to emerge from Africa, that there's, and I don't know if this is true or not. I don't know if you've heard this or not, that there's ancient sphinx that are down in Antarctica, 2 ancient sphinx. So there's 1 in Giza, but then 2 in Antarctica that will be revealed as the snow caps melt, that the diamond architecture will ultimately come from Antarctica, and that it'll be a process or a resurrection of bringing forth a new Lemuria, that Lemuria itself is actually going to rise up from the inside of the ocean, that these crystal lands will come up. We'll have new lands, especially down in New Zealand, also really around the areas of South America and Chile, and that many portions of like the United States and all around where we currently see land meeting water, that those are going to collapse in and actually come into the land, and everything's going to go over the next couple hundred years, complete total transformation. And that comes through the activation of diamond architecture, that diamond architecture is the basis for New Earth prophecy. Have you heard anything like this? Because I've researched a lot of different people's work with this, and I feel like I'm coming back to the same conclusion. Like Lisa Renee, Asha Nadine, Adele Toy, Lori Adele Toy, and there was another gal as well, Judith Kessel. And so when I put all of their work together, it's building the same like apex of where new prophecy is heading in that trajectory.
Yeah, so that's an unpack of a lot of stuff.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't mean to load it on you like that, but I felt like...
Oh, no, I got it. So to start off with, if you look at the sun systems, of course, within us, we have the Dantian, as martial arts calls it, which is a central sun kind of within yourself. So it's, the same goes with the Earth. If you look at the central sun of the Earth, there's a sun inside the Earth. In the center of the Earth, there's a small fissioning star that's created. I went into that in the Hollow Earth Decode on deep dives, but if we look at the inner Earth, on the surface of the Earth, we have 7 primary continents that are on 7 main primary tectonic plates, then on the large plates. And then in the inside of the Earth, you have 12, and those have crystalline diamond structures with pyramids on them. They've maintained their system in the inner Earth. So there's 12 primary continents. You have Shambhala and you have Agartha and several others, a total of 12, with different cultures maintaining and operating in harmony peacefully together. And then if we go to now moving outwards, we look at our star system. We call the sun here the kind of G-class star at third density, which is kind of a yellow star. It'll 4th density and 5th density, it becomes a white star. It has much more energy at a higher density. So we look at that sun, Sol, as it's called, SOL. It is orbited by 2 stars, which are Nemesis, which is a brown dwarf with 7 planets in its system, where the Anunnaki are, which is the main species that's pretty much conquered that system that was conquered. They themselves were conquered by the Alpha Draco. And they are the outlying 3 worlds, Hellion, Argoda, and Nebular. And most people know Nebular Planet X, and that orbits at 12,920 years around our sun, which is why the Earth has a 12,920 degree retrograde orbit on its axis, where it orbits backwards through the Mazzaroth, or the precession of the zodiac that I mentioned earlier. That's why the cycle of time you're in changes, because in magnetic fields, like fields repel. So as that star system comes up into our system from an 86-degree declination negative below our ecliptic, its pole is the same as ours of the Earth. So it pushes it over and it rotates it around, and then it passes in behind the sun, which it did in 2016. Then it comes in behind us, comes up from underneath, from Antarctica area, There's lots and lots of pictures of two suns at the setting sun from all over below the equator, as we call it. It's actually above the equator, but what we call Antarctica, with Helion, Argota, and Nemesis, because those three outer planets also pass through with the sun. They're close, they're on the outside edge of the orbit of that sun. And so then it passes in behind our sun, comes back out in 2018, and passed out of our system, 2018, 2019. So that's why, of course, they know the timing of things. This is why they did, the COOF 19 thing when they did, because they're tying into energies to use those energies in a destructive way instead of in a healthy and healing way for the planet and for life on the planet. And then that star system left. It won't be back for 12,290 years. It's to get the orbit, it's easy. The Earth rotates 1 degree every 72 years. So you multiply 72 times 360. I think I've got the math right. I might be off. Let me do that. Let's see, 72 times 360. 25,000, sorry. I thought I had this off. 25,920 years. The other star system is called Clarion, which is a blue dwarf. It has one huge, unusual planet that's a rocky planet the size of Jupiter, which is extremely unusual. And it orbits at a vastly long frequency time frame. It orbits, it's why you see massive extinctions on Earth every certain time frame, a very long time frame in the millions and millions of years. And I'll go into that later in another decode. So we have those three primary star systems. Now, if we look, we have a central sun inside our solar system, our galaxy center called Alcyon, that's in a black hole, because all falling galaxies, their central sun's in a black hole. And then that galaxy is orbiting 12 with 12 others as kind of like a diamond kind of orbiting like wheels turning, wheels within wheels, where they're turning around each other while they're pivoting around the central sun, 12 around the one again. You have the 12 and the one. And those 12 star systems compose 52 primary stars along with ours. So that's why you look at and then of course the one inside the Earth would make 54. Why you look at a deck of cards, it has, there's several reasons people understand why a deck of cards or a year has 52 weeks. It's going back to this analogy of 12 primary star systems orbit the central sun of the galaxy, all the galaxies of the entire universe, which is called SGRA by NASA, stellar gravitational radio anomaly. It's a giant gravity well that they first found through gravity and huge radio anomaly. So they call it stellar gravitational radio anomaly. And then using infrared and ultraviolet, they found it, and it's at the very, very center of all of the universe's orbit around it. And so one orbit takes 18 trillion years. We're just finishing the first orbit for our solar system around that central sun. The reason why they say the age of the galaxy is what it is the age of where we are is what they say the age of the galaxy, of the universe, because if you're in a location that's only so old, you could only see light that's gotten here from that far away. You can't see, if you're at a location that didn't exist at the age of the beginning of the universe, there's nothing to see here because it wasn't here. Mm-hmm. You can only see as long as you've been at that location, things that have had time to get to that location from there, because prior to that, that location didn't exist. So, when they look out, they're saying the universe is only X old. It's actually 18 trillion years old. So the Sumerians on the tablets, the Sumerian tag, the ancient Sumerian tablets, which are actually a big, huge part of the Bible. A lot of what's in the Bible that the Council in Nicaea got rid of, and even the parts they canonized, they went through and handpicked what parts to put in, even what the apostles wrote. A lot of what they're writing about, the time frames they're writing, are off because they're writing what they got, but they're not knowing where it came from. And it came from ancient Sumerian scrolls and like ancient Hindu scrolls, and ancient Egyptian tablets and Sumerian tablets, and all kinds of very, very ancient. The Sumerians called the central sun Shigra. Not SGRA, of course, it was spelled out. So these ancient cultures had this ancient knowledge because they were in contact with galactic beings from all over everywhere. That's why they took the book of Enoch out of the Bible, because it had aliens all over it. You know, not hidden away as like some weird kind of way of saying it, wheels within wheels, like in Ezekiel, but literally describing them quite pronounced, you know, because they want to hide the fact that we have a lot of help we could rely on out there of good people. They just, you know, like Dr. Stephen Greer really recently came out that they have a limited time to come out to do disclosure, and that all the aliens are good. All the non-terrestrials are good. I kind of side with that in the sense of looking at the terrestrials that are bad. The aliens that are bad are not alien pretty much anymore. They've been here for hundreds of million years running this planet and causing us problems and wars for on and on and on to enslave us. And they've been here so long, you could call them terrestrial because they've adapted. They can't even leave here anymore. They're terrestrial. They're not aliens anymore. So yeah, all the good ones pretty much are out there, and all the bad ones are here, and they're now terrestrial. So yeah, I almost agree with it pretty much. I mean, there's a few cases like the Borgia and some of the other groups that Ashiana Dean goes into that are still out there, but primarily 97+% are really fantastic beings. And all of this ancient knowledge of the Apin systems, the structures, the power crystals, all of this goes into this inner structure. Now going to Atlantis and the pyramid systems on Earth. So Atlantis and Lemuria are Antarctica. That is the part that's left of Atlantis, and the part that's left of Lemuria went and became Antarctica. And of course, their pyramids and their sphinxes are still intact underneath the ice.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think Atlantis is connected through the diamond infrastructure? Because if you just looking at Gondwana to me was kind of the point of galactic history, where you had the Andromedans and the Pleiadians coming to bring these pieces of these diamond crystalline bodies. I guess they created the diamond network inside Gondwana. The breaking up of Gondwana would have been, you know, whether that was symbolic to the splitting of the continent of Lemuria or sinking of particular continents or Tartaria, whatever it was. But do you think that the diamond system, because a lot of the messages I've gotten, at least through my studies through Plato, is that the Eye of Sahara in Mauritania would have been the original Atlantis. Also, the Atlas Mountains in Nigeria, the Gibraltar of Hercules, that strait, that whole area was actually where Atlantis was. So how do you explain that, and how you're just saying Antarctica was Atlantis?
Well, you have to realize that Atlantis was a world empire for an extremely long time. We're talking hundreds of millions of years. So they had a series of downfalls. The first huge one was when the Earth was one solid plate inside and out. It was, as it cooled, it became one solid plate with a magma kind of in between the inner Earth and the outer Earth, like kind of a caramel candy layer. Of course, in this case, glowing hot rock. And during a war with the big war between Atlantis and Lemuria, they broke the crust of the Earth inside and out. And the torque, the spin that causes the torque, caused the continents to pull apart to where they are today, within about 40 feet of where they lie now. That all happened in 40 days. And I'm not talking the flood of Noah. I'm talking much, much earlier. So if you look at core samples from the bottom of the oceans, there are no core samples older than 140 million years old on the bottom. And almost all of the bottom of the oceans are volcanic rock. There's no sedimentary rock down there at all, which means those oceans, all the Indian, Pacific, Atlantic, all of that is 140 million years old or less. That means it all came into being 140 million years ago. What happened 140 million years ago was that war. It's what the devastation we see on the moon was that war. All the craters and stuff we see there are particle beams, not huge meteor impacts. They don't show as if they're meteor impacts. There's not the debris that you should see. The way they're formed is not what you should see. There's a lot of things that people aren't paying attention to when they look at the surface of the moon or they look at the Earth. So that caused the main parts of Atlantis and Lemuria to become Antarctica. And then later on, you had just the part going through the Pillars of Hercules, which is the Rock of Gibraltar, out into Atlantic Ocean. You had that 5-island strand of large islands that were what's left of Atlantis, and that was in the Bermuda area. And then finally, with their last depredations of when they're creating chimeras out of living human beings and all of that stuff, they were destroyed in a singular day. And those islands were completely destroyed. It was a muddy mess. They're actually, if you read Plato and some of the earlier writings where Plinius and these other people are talking about, that area was kind of a muddy mess. It was actually some kind of like muddy, kind of silty stuff towards the surface, and ships would get stuck in it, and it was terrible for a long time. And the crystal was still active from the capital of Atlantis on the ocean floor, creating what's called the Bermuda Triangle until 1987, when a psychic, powerful woman in South America shut it down. And so that ended the Bermuda Triangle, thank goodness. But in the meantime, you still have the remnants of Atlantis and Lemuria that are now called Antarctica. And so during the flood of Noah, which was caused a lot of people, it's called the Younger Dryas extinction. It happened that was the 12,900 something I was getting in my head before, it was caused by a bombardment. A lot of people will say, the common accepted, because they don't do things, they won't accept a far out idea. They're in a box, their head's in a box. So it has to be something natural. A whole meteor shower that hit the ice shelf all the way across the upper North American continent and Northern Europe. The problem with that is what are called the Finger Lakes are part of that. That's part of the runoff from it. But what you're looking at is you have all these lakes across Minnesota, the Carolinas, and all across the upper parts of Europe that are all at 28-degree angle slope. So yeah, that would be a bombardment from space, but they're all the same size. They're all the same shape, the same size. Meteors are not all the same shape and the same size. So what you had was a non-terrestrial group purposely crashing their ships into the ice shelf to destroy the last part of the huge human civilization that was on the coastlines at that time. That's why we see, if you look at Graham Hancock, and he's done dives all over the world and off the coast of India, you've got huge cities underwater off the coast of Japan, off the coast of Okinawa, 200 feet down. And you look at any Google Earth or Raspberry Shake or any of these things where you can see the ocean without the water, you can see that the rivers we have actually flowed much further out, what is now out underwater, but you can see the drainage going down, and then the edge of the shelf is much further out, but 200 to 300 feet down, and then it drops into the bottom of the ocean. And so that's where all the civilization was during that time. And when the Younger Dryas extinction happened, when they crashed their ships and melted that ice, a mile thick ice, in an hour, so you have this huge 2,000-foot wall of water, all of this ice melting that created the Finger Lakes, a huge, massive flood of freezing cold water going to the oceans that dug the Columbia River Basin, dug the Finger Lakes area. You see huge boulders like down in Indian Wells, big, huge rounded granite boulder, the largest freestanding rounded granite boulder that was carried by this massive wall of water that then went to the ocean. Well, at the upper latitudes like that, you have a 2,000-foot high, almost ice cold wall of water heading for the equator. Well, because the Earth is spinning, the ocean levels at the equator are 2,000 feet higher. It bulges because water will be under the force of the torque. And so now you have this freezing cold water hitting tropical water that's first way warmer, second way saltier. So you have a haleocline and a thermocline. You have a rebound wave that's a mile high. So that mile high rebound tsunami hit the continents, and it eradicated horses and all kinds of animals, the large animals, the huge animals on the North American continent. It swept the entire continent, finally ran out of steam, ran out of power up around Alaska. That's why when they dug the Alaska pipeline, they have 200 feet thick deposits of fresh frozen mastodons and saber-toothed tigers and horses and things with food frozen still in their mouth. Because as it ran out of steam, of course, when those ships hit, all that ice had gone into the atmosphere. Pulverized ice also went up into the atmosphere and was blotting out the sun. So the temperatures are falling quickly again. So you had an eradication of the ice age, and then it come back for another 1,000 years, all in a day, plus this huge flood, all in a day. And when that got a refractory wave coming off the other side, going to Antarctica, it went 2,000 feet to Antarctica, caused a reverberation wave. As it hit the equator on this side, it caused a reverberation wave on the other side, a mile high too. That went across Antarctica and quick froze in Antarctica, covering the tropical rainforest, creating all the coal and the tropical fossils they find in Antarctica, burying the pyramids, burying the Sphinx there. There's also a Sphinx in Bucegi that's tied to that, and a pyramid there as well in Romania. I'm doing that Decode. Hopefully, one of the Blessed for Service team will be doing that shortly too. But that then caused the world to go back into an ice age. And so when they're saying they want to get, global carbon dioxide levels to what it was 200 years ago, that's the lowest it's been in the history of the earth, almost, since we had plants and animals on Earth. Mm-hmm. You're talking near extinction levels, because plants have to have carbon dioxide to live. They're driving it back. They want to drive it back down to extinction levels. They're trying to terraform the planet. They're doing weather manipulation control to get people behind the Green New Deal. It's not green, because you're not causing the earth to go green by starving it for carbon dioxide and carbon and keeping it locked up in the soil in the oceans. What caused it to suddenly get more carbon dioxide as it starts to heat, the oceans bubble out carbon dioxide, which is increasing the carbon dioxide level. It has not a lot to do. I mean, it's like 0.0004% of carbon dioxide on Earth is created by humanity. So we really don't have much to do with it at all. And it's actually a good thing. Plants need those hydrocarbons and they need those carbon dioxide. That's why the Sahara is greening, the east coast of the United States, the forests are getting bigger, because the world used to be from about 12,000 feet and down, pole to pole, tropical. You go back 167 million years ago, you've got animals that had their head 80 feet off the ground with trees almost a mile high.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think you made a good point earlier when you were saying that the ETs, I was getting messages recently anyways, that the ETs that we see, like the ones that look like grays, the ones that look like the tall blue aliens with the bulbous heads, whatever you want to call them, Zeta Reticuli, whatever it is, whatever form that you're seeing this, that they are our ancestors, that there's some sort of hologram or even like medium realm or astral realm that is portraying the figuration of them fourth dimensionally through sixth dimensionally, and they're old living holograms ultimately of what we were then, that they are us now reincarnated, and that it's just serving a greater reincarnation harvesting trap, so to speak, which is implemented through the Templar systems, which is implemented through the frequency fences that they've installed all over the earth. So when you talk about these DUMBs and these deep underground military bases, just the other day I was just talking about just underground subterranean power generating stations where they're implementing the frequency fences. So this comes back to planetary control. So who's ultimately controlling the planet in terms of technology, in terms of pole modification, in terms of planetary branding, in terms of all of, you just said it before, weather modification, HARP, MK Ultra, CIA, Montauk projects, whatever it is, that these are the basis for what implements the frequency fences, which keeps the degenerative rehabilitation of humans' DNA evolution from taking place by installing implants and seals into their body. How do we know that Antarctica being frozen up the way it is isn't a planetary seal that they've installed ultimately to planetary modify the planet to keep us from accessing the ancient wisdom and technology of Atlantis and Lemuria?
Well, the technology of Atlantis is not good, but the technology of Lemuria, they're very peaceful and spiritual civilization. And that was part of the problem between the priesthood of Lemuria and the priesthood of Atlantis that went dark. And so if we go into the frequency fences, it's like many people are now realizing that as the Great Awakening, this is what alternative 1, alternative 2 is the domes. Alternative 3 is off-world bases. Alternative 1 was to pre-ionize the Earth's atmosphere. So they tried it first with nuclear weapons detonated simultaneously over the poles, the Amazon, the outback in Australia, Siberia. And of course, it didn't ionize it because that's not predominantly what nuclear weapons do. They eat holes in things. Radiation eats things up like it does in people when they treat you. Eats you up, your hair falls out, you go sterile, your bones get all messed up. I mean, your whole body starts to fall apart. So the Earth opened up.
I just want to add to that too, that those nuclear damages in the Earth, Chernobyl, Fukushima, whatever it is, that's creating the rips and tears in the space-time continuum that keeps us locked in lower dimensional tumultuous fields where the astral body can't actually go through time cycles correctly. So basically it's coming back into space dust or implosion back into the Earth or being trapped or re-entrapped into those reincarnation matrices. Maybe that's what's keeping our ET ancestors locked into the planetary field in the first place, is radiation and nuclear devastation into the Earth's astral field.
Yeah, so we look at the nuclear weapons, that's why we have so many non-terrestrial species showing up here, because it's creating problems. Nuclear weapons have energy, scalar waves and faster than light waves, all kinds of things that go way worse as they go further out. The wave compounds itself as it gets out. So it's bringing beings here that are not going to allow us to go to a complete global thermonuclear war scenario, because it would destroy worlds 10,000 light, a million light years away. Whole galaxies would be wiped out by that. So they're not going to allow it to happen. So if we go into the genetics of the human being, the original 64-stranded genome, in 4 balls of 12 with interconnecting strings within the balls, all of life, every living thing in all of creation, plus the blueprint for creation itself. It's like Greg Braden recently said that it's as if somebody was watching God or the creator or whatever you want to call the being that created everything, the supreme source of all creation, create everything, and was writing it all down and then made a blueprint of that. And that's a part of our genome. And even the genome it says is God eternal within the body. So in every part of who we are based on the atomic weight of the elements. So if you look at that's all coded within our genetics. So if we look at, we're being brought down first from 64 to 48 to 24, and then finally in this star system 12. Then on this planet we got drawn down finally to 2. So all of the non-terrestrial groups come. That's why they keep coming here. They say they created us, and they, we were the blueprint for all of you. And it's as it's broken up, it's broken into different pieces all over the place. So they're coming here because they've been messing with their genome, and they thought it was always an improvement, so they didn't keep the original. So when you do that, eventually you get genetic fading. And so when you have to go back to the original, well, if you don't have the original, where do you get the original source? Us. human beings are still in the etheric level in first and second density, that is still there. So they can reach into that first and second density and get the human genome. So in the case of reincarnation, though, you can choose to be anything you want when you came back to another lifetime. And you're actually simultaneously, like Ashanadid says, 12. It's actually more than that. But we have many, many incarnations going on simultaneously, sometimes even at the same time on the same place on Earth. So if you look at the prophet Elijah, he teaches himself. His younger self teaches his older self how to be the prophet. So yeah, you actually are sometimes incarnated simultaneously.
Yeah.
I'm currently on several different places I'm aware of. Not on Earth, though, just one being here. So when you go into reincarnation, you can pick to be any other species you want to be. As if you're going through ascension, positively or negatively, up to 5D, possibly beyond that. Beyond 5D, you're after 6, you're not corporeal anymore. So then you would go in the sense that we understand. You would become things like stars and planets and galaxies and solar systems. Those are living beings too, composed of living beings, just like we are. We have single-celled organisms like the mitochondria, which is a free form of bacteria out in nature that has some consciousness and some awareness. Everything does, even rocks, even crystals, especially even Tesla said crystals are living. They are living beings. And so when you get an advanced organizational structure like a crystal, now you've got a high level of sentience and you have a vast complexity like a human. You have a decent level of sentience there. And then you can advance that or you can retard that based on your choices. You have a ground structure, how you come in, and you can build on that or you can tear it down. And those choices, the universe itself is a loving, compassionate being. The multiverses, all composite, is part of a singular being. It's not an outside extension of that. It's an inside extension of that. So we're within God. We're all part of God. That just like when you create through your dreams at night or your meditations or your envisioning, you're creating. We are co-creators, and that literally they've shown it through particle bombardment, influence the movement of particles. If it's influencing the movement of particles, as you get more adept, you can influence, and this is what they've been doing with all of these energy fences and all of this, is trying to hold us down so we do not create. Because what we create in service to others and kindness and compassion is not what they want. They want power and absolute control, and that's not about compassion and kindness. That's about controlling, and you do what I tell you to do, when you do, how you do it. So the biggest thing that they're afraid of in this, all of this, is in the awakening that we wake up to this ability and to start getting rid of all the mind speak that they put in our heads and all of these ideas of how God is. Like I had a death experience for 30 minutes and people asked me, what did God look like? What did God look like? He looks like all of creations. He is. That's part of what he is. Just part of it. Everybody look in the mirror. That's part of God. There you are. We're all part. Everything is part. And it's not him. It's not her. It's beyond that. So, this is part of the denigration of the female. We've got us calling God him or daddy or,
right.
He's the father, the mother, the everything of everything. He is the absolute eternal, forever, beyond, before and after, and all of that stuff. It's all of what creations, the multiverse, all the various timelines and infinities and all of that. So in understanding this, to get our heads out of all this mind speak of, identifying, of what you've been indoctrinated to believe in school, let go of all of that, go through your mind and see when you have a preformed way of seeing something, of understanding something, of not questioning something, of, if you have something you cannot question in how you are and who you are, or you have something when you say it to, go to somebody who's in a completely different culture, and if they understand English, they're going to look at you and go, what? That makes no sense at all. Does what you say and what you believe and what you follow make absolute sense. If it doesn't, when it stops making logical sense and it doesn't come together and it doesn't have a repeating pattern that's always the same, as above, so below. You go to the atom, it has a whole bunch of things circulating around, and inside those, even in the nucleus of the atom, those have little tiny quarks that are circling around and doing their things. And the solar system has things circling around, the galaxies and all of that. So you see the same. God uses the same 5 proportions, the same blueprint, the same way of creating, all the way up, all the way down. And so when you see something that is defying that, everything has a kind of way of spinning and torquing, but we're on a non-spinning flat surface. No sense at all. They're mind controlling you. You know, people go into this over and over and over, and it's like you're not using common sense. If there's an ice wall around this flat disk, how come it's curving the wrong way as you go around there? If I go around it to my left, if it's curving around an ice wall, it should be curving towards me, and I should be having force to constantly turn to my right, but I'm constantly going left. If I'm going right, it's the opposite. And the circumference of it, people have sailed it in sailboats, and they can sail it in a very short amount of time. If that's around the outside of the entire Earth, you're talking a massive wall. So you're not using your logic, you're not using your common sense. So every time they're getting you into doing, and you know, this is what you were saying earlier, is divide and conquer. They're getting us into these campments to divide and conquer us, but use your common sense and come out of it, you know, and learn the nature of who you are and what you are, and learn the systems within. Like we have actually 30 circulatory systems too. We have 7 bodies, 6 bodies and 1 Holy Spirit portion of. That is who we are, 6 and 1, just like the creation itself, 6 and 1. You have 3 systems within your circulatory systems within your body. You have 7 male organs, 7 female organs. You have 7 primary chakras. You have 7 microsystem points where all of the 3rd circulatory systems come together, of all the meridians in the body come together. So we're created in the same image. When you're seeing something that they're saying something that doesn't match that, that means they're messing with you and they don't want you to know. And so go back, you know, it's again, science is not evil, it's how it's used. Science is not based on consensus either. Everybody agrees. Well, if everybody agrees, they're probably agreeing with the money. You know, who pays them the most? And they're probably, as Mark Twain said, a bunch of lemmings running off a cliff. They're running you off a cliff. So if everybody agrees, that's not how science works. Science works to discover the information through the scientific method and come up with theories to fit the facts, not make the facts fit the theories. So again, back to Green New Deal and green energy, is it really? If you got an electric car, what powers that? Electricity. Where did that come from? What made that electricity, and how much did it cost to make that electricity in fossil fuels? Does that even make sense? Fossils? Is it ground up rocks? You know, it's oil. That's not ground up rock.
Yeah. I think it really shows the limitations of the human mind and how we have to compartmentalize information just to fully understand bigger pictures of things. Yeah.
And then as you compartmentalize and you start to see you'll start to see the interconnections of how all of it connects together. If it's not connecting, you've got some stuff that's messed up in there that you are believing there's true that aren't true, and go find the truth. It's very logical. Everything God does is logical. Lies are not coherent or cohesive or logical. If you look at renewable, how renewable is. It goes into a landfill and it's in 10 years and it's done forever. And it's relying on a few rare earth elements that once they're mined out and they're spread off in landfills all over the world, that technology is done. It's not even near renewable. But what about anti-gravity and free energy technologies that were around in the early 1800s? We are 200 years behind where we should be. Why do they not want that out? The big oil barons and the big pharma that are tied together, because where does the big pharma come? oil. A lot of those drugs are from oil.
Well, you said we're behind 200 years, and you look at when the United States Constitution enacted the Corporation of Washington.
Yep.
Okay.
1871 was
Yeah.
the Organic Act that they got rid of it and in ran it. But even in the 1776, and you had electricity, what they're not telling you is as soon as they started discovering it, they started discovering that at high energy value, power of a lot of voltage, you could start having anti-gravitational effects. And that's in the early 1800s. They're like 1805. I mean, come on. And Tesla had it down. I mean, he was, and then you had Maria Orsic, and she went off world with off world technologies. You had Victor Schauberger, but even you go back to way more ancient, we go back to the Indus Valley, and you go back to the writings in the ancient Indus Valley, and we have ships that have been found with nuclear reactors, so you can uranium date them. They're embedded in solid rock that are 1 billion years old. The uranium dates to 1 billion years old. That was a stealth ship that its power plant shut down while it was in stealth inside a mountain. They could back then go through mountains like we can again with the TR3s and the stealth craft and the F-35s, all that. Most pilots don't know all of the systems in there. They could fly through a solid mountain. Like I did a dub decoder, showed something in Arizona, in Phoenix. They go, that's a water reservoir. Yeah, but it's also a dub, for TR3s. But it's like people don't. Yeah, I had to pull it because people, at the time where I was, the person didn't want to go into alien stuff. I'm doing it now in the Decode. I'm going to put all of the DUMs with all the alien stuff and all the maps with the alien stuff and all of that. So I'll be showing all the maps of this current Decode on deep dives on gdecode.org. So I'll be recording that after we do this, and then that'll be out for the world. So, at
Well,
least some of that.
awesome. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for your introspective geniusness. And it's so awesome to get to talk to you because I feel like you can expand so far in so many dimensions simultaneously, so many timelines. And it just really brings things full spectrum for those of us that are on this wavelength of information and intellect. And so thank you so much for coming on today. I want to just say to my viewers today too, so tomorrow I am hosting a remote group gridworker session for Africa. We're doing the blackout grids. We're going to be working on the energy systems. We're going to be working on the diamond architecture. We're going to be working on the heart of darkness. We're going to be working on the Nisisanian pentagram in Algeria, which is considered a satanic, ritually abused pentagram, clearing the energies. And so we would love to have you join us. All of the information will be down in the description. And Jean, is there anything else you want to say before?
Yeah, I think I mentioned this last time, but if you're interested in Masonic structures of how they build this big major cities on Earth, you go to the YouTuber Matthews Author, Smathews Matthews Author, like the word author of a book, author. He has many ones showing pentagrams and all, Masonic square and all that for various cities all over the world. So really good site to start learning about that.
Awesome. Okay, well, maybe I can leave that link in the description for them
Yeah. And
today.
then I would like to say for all of those, if you're interested, the BFS website is up and running. You can contact the BFS team. There's lots of it's free. Lots of free stuff. And then I have a pay site where to help support the free site. And also that's genedecode.org. And everywhere else, I'm real Gene Decode because somebody keeps stealing Gene Decode before I could get there. So on social media, I'm real Gene Decode on Telegram and Truth Social and Rumble. I'm real Gene Decode. So thank you, Indy. Fantastic.
You're welcome so much. Thank you for coming on. It was such a pleasure. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and take care.
Thank you. God bless.